Despite praising Gintama being pretty much my entire channel, one aspect often overlooked are the character designs, something that although is not fundamental to the success of an anime or manga, can certainly make a given cast of characters a whole lot more distinct. And Gintama in particular has fantastic character designs, so today let's take a step back, take a look at Gintama's wide cast of characters, and break down why I believe their designs work so well. But first and foremost, I'd say there's three dominant factors that contribute towards good character design. First, distinctiveness. Are they distinct? Do they stand out from other characters? Are they instantly recognisable, even from just a colour scheme or silhouette? Secondly, memorability. It's all well and good to have a distinctive, out-there character design, but if they don't leave an impact on you as a viewer, then what's the point? I think both of these factors have to work in conjunction to leave a lasting impact. And finally, suitability. That is, does the design suit the character it's supposed to represent? Does it fit in with the character's personality? Does it fit in with their potentially more serious role, as well as their more comedic roles in Gintama? Case in point, I think it's fantastic comedic irony that Katsura is one of the weirdest, most outlandish characters in all of Gintama, yet he's also one of the most normal looking people in the show. If you'd never seen Gintama, you'd assume he's just a normal guy, which is funny considering how wrong it is. So with that being said, let's begin with distinctiveness, which in my opinion is normally a pretty consistent positive with most long-running shonen. When your anime are a few hundred episodes long, making characters look distinct is more of a necessity than anything else most of the time. And for me at least, this not only applies internally within the anime, but between multiple anime. For instance, you often hear the argument that Fairy Tail is a knockoff of One Piece because of how similar certain characters look, something Gintama avoids pretty well. So let's take our main trio, Gintoki, Kagura and Shinpachi, all distinct in their own regards, mainly because Gintama avoids a lot of the common tropes with shonen protagonists. By default even, Gintoki is pretty distinct in appearance for a shonen protagonist for simply being an adult instead of a teenage boy. And Kagura is distinct for almost the complete opposite, being a teenager but looking significantly younger, which suits her personality and also makes her more realistic. She looks like a child and she acts like one, whereas occasionally I feel there can be a disconnect between personality and appearance. And then you have Shinpachi, probably the most regular looking person on the show, which makes him less distinct but certainly more suitable. His character design really does give off the idea that he is just some random normal teenager that just so happened to stumble into the weird world of Yorozuya, as he did. But all in all, it should come as no surprise that I love Yorozuya's designs. Gintoki in particular is probably my favourite character design in the medium. White hair, a black shirt with red accents, a white kimono with blue accents draped over the left side of his body, black trousers and black boots. Obviously, it's not so simple that it becomes uninteresting, nor is it too complex as to be overly detailed. It's a good middle ground. His white hair is instantly recognisable and makes him feel more distinct, given most of the characters in Gintama have natural hair colours. The two sets of contrasting colours on his outfit, black against white and red against blue, further support this idea. Simply put, the colours mesh well together without feeling overly harsh and lurid. Unless sharp, unnatural colours are used for stylistic effect, like in JoJo, then I'm not a huge fan personally. I don't like it when an anime's cast is just a rainbow of hair colours and not much more. I also find it interesting how Gintoki's colour palette devolves into both Kagura and Shinpachi's designs, the white and blue to Shinpachi, and the mostly red but also black to Kagura, a neat touch that I think works well, and is even further elaborated on in the second movie when they straight up replicate his clothing. Another element that I feel often goes unnoticed in character design is, for lack of a better word, their props. For instance, the fact that we can isolate an object and immediately associate it with a character and their corresponding design is pretty impressive. Gintoki's wooden sword in particular is iconic. It's intertwined with his character design to a point where it becomes synonymous with other fantastic examples, including the Yato's umbrellas, Tsukio's Kisuru pipe, Utsuro's manji-hilted sword, Tama's mop, etc. But moving to suitability, and one of the most interesting points of Gintama's character designs for me is how relatively normal a lot of the cast look, given the absurdity of the anime of which they're a part of. The designs of Katsura, Shinpachi, Otai, Otase, Tsukio, and others would not look too out of place in a historical anime or manga actually taking itself seriously, like Vagabond for instance. And I think the main thing this accomplishes is by maintaining some elements of normality, the absurd becomes even more absurd. Gintama character designs have only two settings: relatively normal designs with a mix of 19th century Japanese attire with a few modern attributes, or completely ridiculous designs of course meant purely for comedy. There's no middle ground, and Gintama uses this to its full advantage. Like a lot of Gintama, there is a constant balance at play. The balance of comedic moments with more serious moments, I'd argue, is directly paralleled in the balance of character designs from the fairly normal to the downright bizarre. And Katsura I believe to be a perfect example. His character design suggests nothing, just a regular Edo period swordsman, nothing to see here, which becomes surprising when we see how he actually is, because it denies any preconceived expectations. Until again surprising us when he in fact does adhere to what his design would lead you to believe. And then, in a few cases, you have the complete opposite. Characters like Hedoro and Saito, who have blatantly absurd character designs to comedically juxtapose their relatively low-key, normal personalities. It's pretty uncommon you see characters where their designs are essential to their role in the show, albeit quite minor. But finally, on the continuum of Gintama character designs, you have the extreme examples of blatant weirdness, particularly Elizabeth, who I'd argue is the unofficial mascot of Gintama, maybe alongside Sadaharu, which is perhaps unsurprising. In absurdity stems memorability. With Elizabeth, she or he or it is as much as a comedic character as a mascot for Gintama as a whole. A creature in a giant duck costume, which is suitable as it represents all that is so weird and wonderful about Gintama, as much as it is distinct because, well, look at it. But anyway now, something you'd imagine would diminish from a character's memorability would be a uniform. Especially considering in wider anime and manga, so many are set in schools or otherwise require characters to have uniformed attire, it can almost put a limit on how creative a design can be. But in the case of the Shinsengumi, and by extension the Mimawaragumi, this is not much of a problem. Firstly, the lack of many named members besides our main trio helps distinguish them anyway, but also because the uniforms themselves are distinct in isolation. The Shinsengumi's uniforms and design are amazing. They're unique, they contrast perfectly with the typically colourful appearance of most of the cast, they avoid the common blue and white uniform all other portrayals use, and also diverge nicely from the traditional Japanese attire of most other characters, much like in reality. And this intertwining of traditional and modern styles is another factor contributing to Gintama's fantastic character designs. We have a world on the brink of change. Feudal Japan is no more, and with it the aesthetic of the Edo period starts to die out, replaced by a more modern aesthetic. And this I think is a good in-universe idea, to add an extra flair to character designs that would otherwise be bounded by their time period. Characters like Kyubei, Nobume and Sakamoto look fantastic because of this. Characters are not limited to a certain aesthetic. Edo period art and culture is as iconic as it gets, and to inject this heavily romanticised, adored aesthetic with a modern twist is a unique idea by Sorachi that I think pays off. Regardless of whether you like or dislike this art direction, what matters is that it's both memorable and distinct. Furthermore, you have the colourful designs and patterns of traditional Japanese dress, to the point where you can often tell characters apart from the patterns on their clothing alone. For instance, the waves on Gintoki's kimono, the autumn leaves of Tsukio's outfit, and the moth imagery on Takasugi's kimono. Despite being exceptionally small and subtle details, it does still help further distinguish them. And also, speaking of Takasugi, I would argue the character designs of the Joai 4 directly correlate to their acceptance of the modern post-Amanto world. Takasugi and Katsura actively fight back and reject modern society, leading to them perpetuating a more traditional Edo period aesthetic. Gintoki meanwhile sits in the middle, accepting the new world for what it is despite some mild resentment, leading to a mix of both traditional and modern aesthetics, whereas Sakamoto fully embraces the modern post-Amanto world, leading to him ditching traditional dress altogether. Or at least that's how I see it. But anyway now, I think it's pretty clear by this point that Gintama's central cast have fantastic character designs. They're all unique and, simply put, interesting to look at because characters are not distilled into one distinguishing design idea. There's often quite a few attributes per character that make them distinct. For example, while Gintoki is undoubtedly my favourite male character design, Tsukio is my favourite female character design because she has so many unique attributes. Her facial scars, her hair ornaments, her relatively unique colour scheme, distinct purple eyes. You get the idea, it all adds up and creates a fantastic design. Not too detailed, not too simple. And keeping on the topic, it's a nice change of pace to see female characters actually looking somewhat realistic and believable. Fanservice has its place, don't get me wrong, but if it's used, it should be used sparingly, not constantly. And the fact that even Tsukio, a prostitute, doesn't have an overly sexualized design, as you may otherwise expect in anime and manga, is pretty nice to see. But moving on now, and clothing and extra accessories help in anime more so than any other medium, considering most shows, Gintama included, suffer from same face syndrome. By that I mean when you isolate a character's face, especially in a black and white manga, characters can look quite similar. Gintama itself jokes about this a few times, how eye colour and hair are the only factors distinguishing character appearance above the neck. Something which is more of an art style problem than a character design problem in my opinion. I think it would be fair to say Gintama has a particularly inoffensive, normal art style, which is both a blessing and a curse. Adhering to a regular anime and manga art style is probably a lot easier than an out there stylized art style, and is also a lot less of a risk. For instance, I could not disagree more, but many despise JoJo's art style, and that's completely fine. Araki took a stylistic risk, which may be enjoyed by some, others not so much. And in the case of Gintama, it's clear Sodachi played it relatively safe, which I'd say is fair enough. And all in all, it's more of a manga issue than it is an anime issue, which is more of this video's focus, although it still stands, when in isolation, faces can look very similar. But before drawing to an end, one final point of interest I'd like to bring up is the consistency of character designs in Gintama, given the sheer size of the cast. You would expect with such a massive group of characters, some characters may lack a certain artistic charm, but that's not entirely the case. Even some of the more minor arc-based characters, like Asaemon, both Pirako and Jirocho, Princess Kara and Tetsuko, all have fantastic character designs worthy of more central characters, despite in actuality showing up for only a handful of episodes each, a testament to the lasting memorability of a lot of these more minor characters. But with that being said, let me draw to a conclusion. Gintama's character designs are fantastic as a whole, despite being something often overlooked. In an anime with as many characters as Gintama, good character design is pretty crucial. Character design is never a decisive factor in determining whether an anime is good or not, unless it's particularly bad, but in the case of Gintama, it helps heighten the already distinctive and lovable characters that much more. And with that, I'll be back in the next video. See ya! Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Just wanted to put in this little unscripted section at the end to kind of break away from the script for once in my life. And wish you guys a happy Christmas, because I mean, God knows when this video is coming out, probably at the start of next year. Not next year, next week, sorry. So yeah, hope you guys are well, and not freezing to death either, because it's snowing out here in London. And it is freezing, so, yep, stay safe, see you guys in the next video.